Well, your film Be Water is incredible, and it is just the most amazing look at Bruce Lee's life and legacy. Why did you think that right now was just the perfect moment for exploring what Bruce Lee meant to the world?
Well, I think right now in Hollywood and in a lot of different aspects of our society, representation and diversity are often being spoken about. And so I'm thinking like today, it's hard enough being a person of color working in Hollywood, but how was it that Bruce Lee in 1960s, 1970s America make it or kind of have the perseverance to kind of try to be this Hollywood actor and star. And so I really wanted to kind of unpack what I thought I knew about Bruce Lee, because most people only know him as type of this mythical figure, this iconic figure, but they don't really know the struggles and kind of the everyday obstacles that he had to overcome to kind of become Bruce Lee.
And to flesh that out, you did such amazing research for this film. I not only are all the archived TV clips and film clips incredible, but the way that you found like correspondence and letters from, studio executives, sometimes, that just include the most awful racist things, either about Bruce directly or about the kind of characters that he would play. And how did you go about digging up some of that stuff?
So we were very lucky that Bao had developed a really good relationship with the Bruce Lee estate. And so they actually, in terms of a lot of the personal letters and diaries as such, they gave us access to those. And I think there is also an element of, because we were coming to this story with the angle of identity and the challenges that he had faced, we were just looking at everything in a different way to what people have before. So this information isn't necessarily new. It's just that we were looking at it from a different perspective, because people have always just, in past films and maybe TV shows on Bruce, they've always kind of looked at it from the mythical, just focusing on the movies, but they, no one really truly understood how much of a challenge it was for him, and so we were kind of lucky that we had that perspective, and that's when it was a slight Pandora's box really, for discovering all these things.
I mean, I myself had forgotten that he had a career in Hong Kong as a movie star as a teenager, and that you found some of those clips plus a lot of his TV work. How did you go about finding those clips?
With our project, it's, again, through a very specific lens, and because of that, I think there was an easy way to find those clips that related to our film. And I think also a lot of times people either identify Bruce Lee as from Hong Kong or as this global icon. It's not usually seen as an American, he's not really seen as an American figure many times. So by focusing on the Hong Kong aspect a little more, we tried to bring that kind of childhood experience of his into kind of the American landscape, because I think in America, most people see him as a global icon and not necessarily look at him through his young Hong Kong years, which were obviously very formative to who he became as an actor later on in Hollywood. I think without his experience as a child actor in Hong Kong, he would have never been able to be as charismatic as he was, say, in that screen test that he did in the 1960s.
And also we realized very early on when we started working together that we couldn't just, we couldn't not be in Hong Kong. So we obviously were in Hong Kong, we were on the ground, a lot of our crew were from Hong Kong. We made sure we employed one of the best kind of archive people in the business over there. And we did have to earn a lot of trust. As Bao says, there are these fan clubs and, people are very passionate about Bruce Lee. And, when you go to Hong Kong, he belongs to them in a way, and so it was a lot about getting people's trust, and even for me, as a Bruce Lee fan, I was very much with those latter movies that we all know so well, and I was just, I felt very lucky really to uncover all of these movies, from when he was 3 months old to when he was 18 when he left Hong Kong. So yeah, it was a really special experience being in Hong Kong with all the super fans.
And one of the great things about seeing the kind of early childhood films is that we actually hear his voice. And a lot of the later films that he shot in Hong Kong, they're all dubbed. And so to hear Bruce Lee speak, especially as, before he was 18, there's something a bit kind of intimate and personal that we wanted to portray throughout the entire film.
And, Bruce Lee is so fascinating because he spoke to so many different marginalized groups. African American film viewers loved his films so much, and you speak to that a little bit in this movie. Can you talk in general about what he meant to marginalized groups in general? Of course, he spoke very much to Asian Americans, but even beyond as well.
I think he was kind of this figure who approached people not by what you look like, but kind of just your personality, your character, who you were as a person rather than how you looked. And I think with our film, we kind of explore that when he first arrives to America, when he befriends Jesse Glover and a lot of diverse groups of people as soon as he becomes, let's say, an immigrant American, for lack of a better term. And also later on when he becomes friends with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So you can see that he is always kind of in diverse and multicultural communities, which is one of the themes we wanted to explore with the film, is that, by being with people of different cultures, by having cross-cultural communication and learning from each other, we kind of make this, for me, in a sense, a better world to live in. And I think he never thought of himself in a way as kind of like being this champion of the underdog. Like, that wasn't his goal necessarily, but I think that's kind of a consequence of him as a person and what he stood for after he passed away.
And so, this film arrives at a very opportune moment, right in the wake of a lot of controversy around Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last year. I'm wondering, how do you think that this film sets the record straight, or it responds to, or is in dialogue with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I think, our film is about Bruce, the complete guy, So we look at very much, his journey and everything, where he came from, the challenges he faced. And so I think, for anyone that, has seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which many people have, that's just like a really, small snapshot, and that's also an interpretation in a fiction film by a fiction film director. Obviously, our film is a documentary, and we've been working really closely with people that knew him, family members, and really studying the literature and the news that is out there in terms of the news of the past. And so I think, you just get a very complete picture of the challenges he faced and who he was. And we're also where no one's perfect, and so we all have different traits of our personalities, and I think you'll get that from our film.
Do you think that what we saw in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a misleading portrayal, or was it just out of context or not the complete picture? Because there are two ways to go there. Some of the criticisms have been very pointed, and but others have said as well that maybe this is just one slice, one view of him, and then your film would present, say, the whole view.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, I think it was an unfortunate decision for it to appear to be a very heightened, kind of caricature of someone that has many different sides to them. So, in my personal opinion, it was unfortunate that was the only view of Bruce that we got, because there's so much more.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things to emphasize what Julia is saying is that we wanted to give Bruce a voice, because not a lot of times people of color are given a voice in a way, and I think that version of Bruce Lee is very much a version of Bruce Lee in our film, and I don't think any documentary can be definitive or even totally like a complete view of anyone. So this is, in a way, I was trying to make a more personal film about like how Bruce Lee impacted like Asian Americans such as myself, and how we view him as kind of an immigrant American and how he represents the American story. While in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino, obviously he has, as a director, artistic freedom and license to do what he wants, but I would say with my film, or our film, I should say. We wanted to know Bruce the person and hear his conversations and hear his struggles and hear from the people who knew him best.
And what I love so much about this film is that you don't have talking heads. Sure, you have them as narrators in voiceover, but you let all this amazing archival footage really speak for itself. How early on in the production did you decide to make that choice?
I mean, for me, I always enjoy films where I feel immersed in the story, and I knew kind of early on that I wanted to tell it without showing talking heads as much as possible. And it's, I thank Julia for giving me the opportunity, because not a lot of producers would be like, oh, yeah, we're going to shoot all these talking heads, but we're not going to show them.
And I must add, we did have quite a few heated discussions about the level of high definition we wanted to shoot. So I was obviously very supportive always of Bao's creative vision, but I did have a small part of me inside was like, oh God, the budget,
As you should be as a producer.
Yeah, but no, I was always really supportive, because actually very early on, even though, because we forget, Bruce would be in his, let me do the maths properly, late, yeah.
Now this would be his 80th birthday this year in November, yeah.
And so if you think about that, a lot of the people that knew him, because one of the big focuses for us was to make sure people that had actually experienced time with him, had spoken to him. And actually, we wanted to give the film quite a timeless, kind of feel. And I think by not seeing anyone and really the focus being on Bruce, you're really immersed just in him. And you notice, like one of the things I love, coming back to the film, when I just, I've watched it so many times, but we watched it recently on the big screen, and I loved myself seeing the Bruce getting older, over that period from, I suppose 18 to 32. And yeah, so, and I think, not having the talking heads really adds to that, so the audience can really feel connected to Bruce and
Yeah, when you see someone who's 80 and you're talking about someone who's in his 20s, it really throws you into the present time. So we wanted to make sure the audience felt like they were in the 1960s and 1970s, and I think that's a very specific experience for a viewer, especially in a film that takes place in the past. And in a way, we wanted the film to flow in a way, be like water. So it would just kind of, the scenes would just jump from the next without having that jarring talking head, which I think, I love talking head interviews. Or films, and I'm not criticizing them, but I think we do kind of play homage to the talking heads, and I don't want to kind of ruin the surprise in a way. But
yeah, and I suppose the only thing also, because it's so devastating that he died so young, I think you feel that much more acutely. Well, I feel that you do, because we keep him, he doesn't get any older than that age, if that makes sense, because obviously you're going to be, all his contemporaries are so, are much older now, so, yeah.
So, what is your hope for when people see your film? What will they take away? What do you hope that they'll take with them and be inspired by and be thinking and take into their own lives afterward?
I mean, for me, Bruce Lee has always been this unobtainable kind of mythical figure that I could never reach to that level. And but by exploring his life, his struggles, his fears, I think that by humanizing our icons, our heroes, we can aspire to be like them or see parallels in our lives. I was coming through a really rough time when I was making the film, and talking with Shannon Lee, who also rediscovered her father's writings because of her brother's death, I saw the importance of his aspirational words, but I saw where they came from. They weren't just kind of him writing kind of self-help quotes, but because he went through a lot in his life, he was able to kind of find the self-confidence in himself. And I think for many young people or people who are going through tough times who look up to Bruce Lee, by seeing his struggles, they can really feel like, okay, I can make something out of myself. I can, be a better person if I just work at it in a way.
And I think, you know, for me, he worked so hard, and I think everything that, you know, was deserved by him and all his successes, nothing was ever taken for granted, and nothing was ever, what's the right word, kind of expected in a way. He knew that by putting the time in and that he would reap the rewards, and at times he didn't know whether he would reap the rewards, but he was so determined. And I think when you see that, especially for us working in this industry that we do because we're so passionate about filmmaking, there are a lot of knocks, and actually, you know, having him as a kind of guiding light in this film just makes you realize more, because we're so lucky to do what we love. We just got to keep working hard, and hopefully, yeah, like Bruce, we can make more movies.
One more thing to add. I think one of the things that we wanted to have be part of the film is the idea of representation in this kind of historical context of what led up to Bruce Lee in a way, and in context of Asian American history, even just American history, and that seeing yourself on screen and being reflected on the images that you see on television and film are really important to everyone. I think it was hard for me growing up as an Asian American and not really seeing positive portrayals of people who look like me. I mean, there were portrayals, but having negative portrayals or kind of stereotypical portrayals actually might be counter intuitive to what I think the power of culture, the power of cinema and television can be.